I posted my first video for this channel to YouTube on September 27th, 2020. The video about this computer hiding under this dust cover is going to get posted on the 5-year anniversary of that first video. But that wasn't my original plan. My original plan was for this to be my second long form video and not my 95th long form video. This computer, at many levels, both for my channel, for the previous owners, and for the creators, has quite a story behind it. In the few days between when I recorded that very first video and when I got it edited and posted to YouTube, big surprise, I went to an estate sale. This sale was out in the Gresham area east of Portland. And I went to it because I saw something in one of the pictures that looked, it looked like a computer, but it was so weird. And unfortunately, I didn't save any of those pictures. I did take a picture of it in situ where I found it in the basement of the house. This estate sale was a little bit different than a lot of estate sales that I go to, in that this was run by the family instead of by an estate sale company. So, as a result, I got to talk to the people who had actually owned this. I talked to one of the kids. It was a guy who was basically about my age, and he told me the story of how his family got this completely ridiculous computer. But what is this thing? Well, let's take a look. This computer is a Durango F-85. And if you're looking at this and thinking, that doesn't really look like a home computer, you're not wrong. This is an office computer. It was designed as an office computer. It was marketed as an office computer. And I don't think anyone except maybe this one family ever used it in a home. Now, this thing is a beast. Not only does the computer part weigh 67 pounds. It is 28 inches wide and it is 22 inches deep with a cute little 9-inch monochrome monitor. So how did this family get this ridiculous office computer? Well, there was two brothers. They were maybe like a year or two apart, and like a lot of kids in the mid and early 80s, they wanted a home computer, and they mercilessly nagged their dad to get them a home computer. They wanted anything, a Commodore 64, an Apple II, heck, even a VIC-20, just anything. Dad, bring us a computer. We want a computer. Like all the deals that kids will try to make, like it can be both of our birthday presents and both of our Christmas presents for the whole year. We don't care. We just want a computer, relentless. So one day on his way home from work, the dad sees some kind of a business place is going out of business. Everything must go. We're going to sell the carpet. Everything must go. This part of the story will come back around later. So he goes in, he looks around, he says, "Oh, look at that. They're selling a computer. I'm going to check that box." So he buys this computer. And he gets home and he says, "Hey boys, guess what? I got you a computer." And they're just ecstatic. And they're running around and they're so happy. Like, yeah, we got a computer. Like all, the Nintendo 64 kid, like all the things that you see, they're so excited. Their dad takes them out to the car, shows it to them, and they're like, yeah. No, really, where's the computer? And what is that? And he told them, and this is one of the most 80s parenting moves I think I've ever heard of. He said, "You wanted a computer. I got you a computer. I don't know anything about computers. You figure it out." So they did. And for at least a couple of years, this was their family computer, and they figured out how to use this thing. One of the things that comes with this computer somewhere on floppy disk is a version of BASIC, and the guy that I talked to said that he and his brother, they wrote games for it in BASIC, and when I've looked through some of the floppy disks, and there are a lot more floppy disks than just that, he said there's some of the floppy disks that are labeled like games and fun stuff, and they did what anyone would have done with a computer. They used it the best that they could because it was the thing that they had. Now, you may also be thinking, 67 pounds, 28 inches wide, this thing is a massive beast. And again, you are not wrong, but this is only half of it. The other half is so big and so heavy, I don't trust putting it on this table. This monstrosity is the hard drive. I had originally planned to do some dramatic thing where I carry this in and set it down on the desk and, demonstrate just how ridiculously heavy it is. But there's a lot of stuff in the way and a bunch of cables and things. And while I was kind of rehearsing and doing dry runs of that, I got afraid that I was going to trip over something and drop this massive thing and break it, break my foot, break something that is too old for that kind of shenanigans and nonsense. This hard drive, I can hardly believe the reality of this thing, is as big as the computer. It is 28 inches wide by 21 inches tall, but it weighs 75 pounds. It's heavier than the computer. And what do you get for this 75-pound beast? Other than it will probably make the lights dim when you turn it on? It's 25 megabytes. Now, we had done some research about this device back in 2020 and found out pretty sure that it contains two 14-inch platters. That's it. After recording the original videos back in 2020, I took this, the computer, the box of accessories, over to Adrian Black's house with the intent that I would do a video introducing this computer that until now, there's no other videos about this thing anywhere on YouTube, and he was actually going to make it work. Well, for 5 years, it just sat in a corner of that digital basement waiting for something to actually happen. And I had hoped that I would never have to move this thing again. Originally, when I filmed the video back in 2020, my regular table didn't have any of the shelves behind it, and it didn't have any of the cabinets above it. So I fit everything on that table and had it all displayed out. There's not space for that now. So I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to set this up so that it can all be seen together in all of its glory. If we're going to delve into the question of what the heck is this thing, I think we first need to ask ourselves the question, who is Durango? Now, my first guess upon seeing their logo and seeing the form language and the color scheme and some of the other aesthetic choices made about the system and some of their literature is, surely this must be a company from Texas. It turns out no. In fact, their original headquarters were right across the street from Apple Computer in Cupertino in 1976. So they were for sure not Texas. But who the heck were they? Well, there's not a lot of information available out on the internet. I could only find two of what I consider to be primary sources. There is a single website that is maintained by a person who, from the language that they use in the website, I'm inferring they must have worked at this company back in the day. And there is a single article that I could find in Computerworld from October 1978 talking about the release of this computer and talking about the company and who the heck these guys are. Now, in addition to the stuff that I was able to find out on the web, I found this amazing document in the box of stuff that I got with the computer, it was in with some of these other marketing materials. And this says basically the same thing as what most of the websites say. George Comstock, John Scandalios, I don't know. I don't know why I have a lot of trouble figuring out how to say that name. And Charles Wagoner, they had all originally been at a company that Comstock and Wagoner started called Diablo Systems that made printers. That company was eventually acquired by Xerox in, I want to say, 1972. They were at Xerox for some period of time. And according to this article, Comstock saw his, the stock price of Xerox tanked, and that kind of irritated Comstock. So he thought, well, I was doing fine without these guys. Screw it. I'm going to go start my own company again. And so they spun off and they created Durango. And then that was when they moved in across the street from Apple. Now, there are a couple of things in this article that are just precious. The name Durango may not be a household word like IBM or Xerox. It sure is not, and it never would become. And then there was another thing. Now, as far as I know, this document does not exist anywhere on the internet. Yes, it will be scanned and uploaded to archive.org. One of the other things, now they're talking about, they're talking about the product in general. I love this line. We designed it to be as non-threatening as we could make it. Now that thing's a beast. It is my back feels threatened by that computer. In addition, in this document, it talks about how they're primarily targeting smaller businesses because the larger company market will take more time to develop, right? It's a lot harder to get into. I mean, they wanted to be IBM, right? And it's hard to break into those. As a person who worked at a company, Sequent Computer Systems, that was trying to play in that market, yes. But then I found out the one other line that I really liked at the end. Given the rapid growth pattern of Durango, Comstock may soon be faced with the same problem of feeling uncomfortable in a large company, which he has experienced at Xerox. But he says, that's a dilemma I'll happy to be deal with when it comes. Or when it happens. And so they made the F-85. They would eventually drop the F-85 name and go to a more fully rounded product naming scheme. Kind of when the IBM PC came out, that really threatened their sort of target market of small businesses. They did eventually try to make some computers based on 80186s and 80286s that ran MS-DOS but weren't PC compatible. But based on what I have read, it was too little, too late, and too expensive. And let me tell you, these were not cheap. The release price of the computer that I have, it's sitting back there out of camera, in 1979, when it was released, was $13,500. And as far as I can tell, that is for the computer that I have sitting over there, just the computer. So that's the computer, the printer, the tiny janky little monitor, and the 2 floppy drives. No hard disk. The hard disk, as far as I can tell, was an add-on that cost another huge pile. I mean, it's a huge pile of hard drive, and it cost a huge pile of money. So we have another article. This again, this came in the box with the computer. This was some kind of marketing materials. This was from the Rental Equipment Register, April 1980. This is an article specifically about the computer. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about this article. One is that it's specifically about a rental equipment company, and we'll see why that's interesting here in a moment. The other thing, they specifically mentioned that they figured out that if they were going to supply a computer is useless without software, and that when other people are making software for your system, they may not target it properly. Like every Amiga fan who saw crappy ports of PC games to the Amiga knows about that one. So they decided to make all their own software. The other thing that I thought is kind of interesting about this, and this is a really terrible picture, but you can plainly see, so you can see Roetta Williams entering invoices, and she looks so happy. There's some great, in some of this other material, there are some great pictures. She's so happy to be entering these invoices. You can see the computer, the tiny little monitor. You can see this other little box where at first I thought that this was like family photos or something, but now I think it's an open floppy disk box. Either way. And the thing that she's actually looking at to type from is, you know, a mile away over here. Nobody works like that. It's ridiculous. So the level of contrast in this image is pretty terrible, so it's hard to tell what this is. It's for sure not a hard drive. My best guess is that this is the external floppy drive that is hinted at by that port on the back of the system. That's all I can figure. And then, you know, primarily the rest of this article is about, you know, the computer was super expensive, but oh my goodness, it has solved all of my company's problems. It's the best thing ever. So for sure, it's a fluff piece. Now, I find it a little bit interesting that this was from April 1980, because I have reason to believe that this specific computer was also purchased in 1980, just maybe like a month or two later, but we'll get to that. So what is the F-85? Like, the company and the company history and all that is interesting, but what is the computer? Well, this marketing material contains a lot of really good information, and I think all of this information is also available online. At least it matches what I had found. Among other things, in the software, they do have a really nice, they call it here a basic compiler / interpreter. My understanding from having read some of the things online is that it compiles to P code, and that P code is then interpreted, so it's compiler / interpreter is maybe accurate, but that means that the basic programs probably should be pretty fast, and also it should be much more difficult for a poorly written basic program to take the whole computer down, which seems like a good thing in an office system like this. And it's my understanding that pretty much all of the software was written in BASIC. I'm not 100% sure about that. They do specifically call out IEEE bus compatible peripherals here. The port on the back that connects to the hard drive, it just says parallel bus on the back of the system, but it's an IEEE 488 bus, just like on the PET or on any number of HP computers. So I'm going to skip this bit about the processor because there's a better page talking about it a little bit later. One thing that I don't know is about this keyboard. A couple people who have seen it in person and have kind of typed on it believe that it may be a foam and foil keyboard. So once it gets opened up, there may be a lot of sadness. Okay, so here's the spec sheet. So it's an 8-bit CPU, 3 megahertz. It doesn't say here, and I don't think it says anywhere in this manual, it's an Intel 8085. 64K of RAM. Parity, which I thought was interesting, 8K ROM. The disks are 473K. I'm not sure how you end up with that. Now the display is 80 by 24 or 64 by, I don't remember. I've seen it quoted elsewhere. Now it says line graphics. I think that this means line graphics like PETSCII or the extended ASCII that is on IBM PCs, something like that. No graphics. Yeah, here it does say IEEE 488. Now in here it mentions auxiliary terminals. I have seen a terminal once. The first time when I went to VCF in, I want to say 2022, in the consignment room, there was one of these terminals. And I'm like, this makes twice that I have heard of Durango. What the heck? And I wasn't able to contact the person that had it, and I don't know where it went. Now they call out that the printer 9x9 dot matrix. Elsewhere it says that it is, oh yeah, here it is, a bidirectional. So what I'm inferring that means is that it prints going forward and prints coming back to improve performance. Now, one thing that I object to a little bit is in here, they say 56 pounds, which I guess, okay, so it's 56 pounds just the computer and then an extra 9 pounds for the monitor. I measured mine 2 pounds heavier than that, but whatever. And yes, 28.5 inches by 22.5 inches. It is just a massive beast. And so far, every table that I have put it down on, there's something on the bottom of that when I move it across the table, every table I have put it down on, it leaves a huge, massive, ugly scrape. Now, the other thing that I read quite a bit about is that it has apparently a super nice operating system called DX85 that apparently is a multi-user, fully multitasking operating system. So apparently you could connect those terminals to it and somehow have multiple users working on your 64K 8-bit system at a time. I'm not sure how well that would actually work out. I mean, maybe if everyone is just typing and doing basic word processing kinds of things, but then as soon as anyone needs to do any kind of tabulation or calculation in ledgers or whatever, like, yeah, that would be pretty terrible. And there's going to be some jerk at the office who's on a terminal somewhere that is going to like, oh, look, Joe isn't watching. Let's send a bunch of crap to the printer. you know, because at heart we're all kids. And again, it calls out their basic programming language. I am very curious about this basic programming language. The guys who owned this computer and used it at home, they wrote a bunch of programs in BASIC and they did a bunch of stuff with it. So I don't know. I want to see what they did. I want to see what kind of mischief they got up to and play around with it a little bit. The other piece of documentation that I have that is not specific to a particular piece of software is the operator's manual, and there are some priceless images in here. And this is sort of like and here we go. Like, is anyone, I mean, one, is anyone ever that happy at work? And is anyone ever that happy using a computer? Come on. You're not fooling anyone. And so again, this basically talks about, here's all the pieces and parts, where everything goes. It does have a numeric keypad on it. Uppercase and lowercase and a condensed font. Throughout a bunch of the stuff, there are small handwritten notes. Now, I love this. I love this page. I have seen a lot of things of, don't treat your floppy disks with kindness, but I have never seen one. And again, this is part of the reason why I thought that this company must have been from Texas, because they show a person with a cowboy boot trying to stomp a floppy disk into the drive. Like, don't. Every time I see that image, it cracks me up. I love it. Insert gently. Do not smash it in with your boot. Some general stuff about how to adjust the printer and whatnot. How to set a bunch of the things up. I mean, this is all pretty basic troubleshooting kind of stuff. It does talk a little bit about how to remove the monitor, and something that I wonder about is what exactly the signaling is that comes off of this monitor, and can something else be connected to it that is not a tiny little 9-inch monitor? Something like the RGB to HDMI or some other kind of monochrome monitor. Like, I don't even have any idea what the refresh rate is, what the pinout, nothing. So that there's going to be so many fun things to explore with this computer. One thing that I am missing out of this set is I don't have this basket that goes back here, so that presumably the paper goes in somewhere, and this is for the paper to go out into. I never had a printer back in the day, so I never had to worry about paper management like that. So I'm not exactly sure, is this to hold the paper before it goes in or to hold the paper after it comes out? I'm not sure. Now, in addition to these marketing materials, there were some other things in the box. There is this document that is dated April 1980 from Durango. That is a software update to the payroll software. I am not sure if this came with the computer when it was bought new, or if it was added. If this was a software update that they received afterwards. It's kind of a little bit interesting. I when I was talking about this other article, I was for some reason remembering that this was June 1980. So this must have come after, but it has Coast Crane, I don't know how well that's coming through, written on it in handwriting. And then I have these other two documents that are from, and I don't remember which one was earlier. So this one is from 5/28/1981, and this one is from 6/8/1981 from Western Star Business Systems. Presumably this is the location who actually sold this computer to Coast Crane and Equipment. And there's a couple other things that are definitely from much later dates. In through 1984, there's written on the boxes there of discs. There are lots of dates of when system backups were made from the hard drive. Coast Crane and Equipment was using this computer at least as early as May of 1981, possibly as early as April of 1980. And this is where I'm going to kind of go a little bit different direction, and this is going to actually be a little bit darker, and I feel somewhat awkward talking about this, but I think it's an important part of the story of this actual machine. I have another document that I'm going to show part of what is in this envelope. It is dated, postmarked June 10th, 1986, to Mr. Ralph Hovis of Coast Crane Body and Equipment. I'm going to show the letter that's in here in a very heavily redacted form for reasons that will soon become apparent. What I have been able to infer from this document is that Coast Crane and Equipment, they rented large pieces of equipment out to various places, including the Oregon State Department of Transportation. At some time, presumably sometime before June 10th, 1986, because that's when this letter was dated, they rented a dump truck to the Oregon State Department of Transportation. Somehow that piece of equipment exhibited some sort of failure, and in the process, somehow resulting from that failure, a highway worker was killed. And so this letter is a letter from their law firm, and they needed a new point of contact. And so apparently both Coast Crane and Ford Motor Company, presumably who manufactured the dump truck, were named in this lawsuit. There were co-defendants, I guess. I don't know exactly how this lawsuit turned out, but from the information that I learned from the family who owned this computer, I'm going to infer that it didn't turn out well. At the very least, the legal costs of the lawsuit wrecked the company. Or they lost, and the settlement was so incredibly massive. I mean, it was a wrongful death suit, I would fully anticipate that it would be a massive settlement, that completely destroyed the company. And so they had a massive going out of business sale. Everything must go. Apparently, like were selling all the office furniture, all the fixtures. I think that the guy that I talked to had joked that his dad said that they were ripping up the carpet and selling the carpet. I think that may have been an exaggeration for effect, but nonetheless, the company that owned this was destroyed because of this accident. And then because of that, 2 adolescent boys ended up with a ridiculous office computer. One of the most potentially interesting things in the box was this huge pile of floppy disks. There are so many disks here. Now, the vast majority of these, they have listed, labels on the cases that say that they are various backups from, this one is from all manner of dates through 1984. They are real dirty. Now there's a couple of these. There's one, I think, in this box that has a disc in it, games diskette. And this, my memory was a little bit faded. I remembered that there was a disc that said games on it, but I thought that it was handwritten and that it was something that the boys had made. But this is dated 1983, definitely when Coast Crane owned this computer, and it came from Western Star. What kind of games? What kind of games are on here? This I want to know about a lot. Now, I like these boxes. I like this logo with the sort of the implied action from the lines. I really like that. However, these were not great storage boxes for floppy disks. You can see there are, and disks in the other box are like this too. Like go home, floppy disk. You're drunk. There was a disc. Was it this one? No, I think it's maybe this box. There's a disc that I am also super interested in. Hopefully we'll be able to archive and dump, that says FD Diag, which I'm assuming is floppy drive diagnostic. Do not use unless instructed by Western Star, which I found that's pretty interesting. So in addition to those, and these actually show their address, they would eventually move from Cupertino to San Jose. 3003 North 1st Street in San Jose. There was also this disc, which I think is especially interesting because it's still set off to the side on its own. And this is just a software update. Enclosed is your 1985 update to the payroll tax table. Please call for installation instructions. And elsewhere, there are some other instructions for how to install various years' tax update software. But I did like that this one was not in one of these boxes. It's it's an officially Durango logo disc. It was in the box that it was shipped in, and like, dear eBay people, this is how you pack. Like, this was a floppy disk. Like, this is how you pack something. Now, the bulk of the box of extra goodies, both by weight and by volume, is software documentation. And this is a mammoth pile. Now, some of it is about, like this document here on the top, there is stuff about BASIC and the video displays, and they're all flipped around and in weird order. I guess this is probably backwards. So this is the video displays, where it talks about, mean, a lot of this, it's talking about formats in a bunch of their software. A lot of it is just about their accounts payable software. I mean, that is the bulk of what people are going to use this for. Let's see if I can. All right, so this section 1, the introduction for, yes, the accounts receivable reference manual. Now, the completionist in me thinks this whole thing, all of this stuff should get scanned and should get, made sure that it's all in the correct order. But also, there's probably, maybe 500 pages here. The backup utility user guide, at least this is stapled together. The general ledger user guide, stapled together. The accounts payable user guide. What I was hoping for, and what I could have sworn I saw, but I'm now not finding, is, so apparently in March of 1984, they got broke in over the weekend. That's interesting. They got broken into over the weekend. These diskettes did not have a box. Thief could have used to put money in. Did they get hacked? Did someone break in and modify their ledgers to... There's so much of a story behind this computer. Oh, this is a piece of plastic from the front that goes over the printer. Okay, so then what is all this? And then this is, okay, so again, this is another piece of, they were definitely using this machine in July of 1984. Ooh, that's a different logo. I kind of like that. And then this is all of, presumably, Coast Crane's specific procedures for doing different, for their own processes. I am not going to dig through this on camera. I suspect that there's not particularly private information in that, but. So there's a huge pile of documents. I'm generating quite a backlog of stuff to be scanned. A huge pile of diskettes, apparently using some of the kinds of floppy disk readers like Grease Weasel and things like that. People have figured out how to read the floppy disks, so all of those should be archivable. So what's next for this beast of a computer? My original plan was that I was going to do this video 5 years ago, and that then Adrian was going to take the computer and actually get it working and see if it could do some stuff. The main reason why I wanted to do it like that was because at that time I hadn't done any repairs of goofy, weird old computers. I had no experience with it, and this was kind of a maybe not a unique piece left in the world, but one of very few left in the world. And I didn't want to screw it up. And at that time, I didn't know what I didn't know. So I wouldn't have any idea if I was going to screw it up. And based on some of my experiences before I started making videos, trying to repair Commodore 64s without any proper equipment, total disaster. But I've learned a few things in the last 5 years. So I'm going to do that repair. I'm going to get that damn thing working. One way or another, I am going to get that thing working. I've got a few other things. I'm going to limit myself in the next few months to the Durango, the TRS-80 Model 1 that I started on in my previous video. I do still need to get back to the IBM PS2 that I had started repairing, and I have one other thing that I'm going to work into the mix. I'm going to kind of rotate through those 4 things until everybody is completely wrapped up. Part of the reason why I'm going to do that is there are a bunch of the things where I need to order some parts. I still need to order the replacement capacitor for the TRS-80. I also need to order, I think I'm going to just order a bunch of capacitors for the PS2, some things like that. So while I'm waiting for stuff to get shipped to me, I'm going to work on other things to try to keep my pipeline full and not go 6 weeks in between videos. If you are interested in that, as I always say, I highly recommend that you click the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed this, found it interesting at all, I would really appreciate it. It would be a great 5-year anniversary present to me if you would click the like button. And until next time, try to remember the good stuff.